My name is Emily. I live with my husband in a spacious house. We have a son named Richard who reached adulthood a few years ago and moved out. Initially, I felt lonely without him, but I've since adjusted. Still, it always brightens my day when he calls to say he's coming home. One day, Richard called to tell us he was visiting and had someone special to introduce. From the moment we heard this, my husband and I were filled with excitement. Before noon, Richard arrived with a lovely woman by his side. Although I had an inkling from his words, I never truly expected him to bring someone home. My son, beaming with pride, introduced her. Her name is Karen. Isn't she wonderful? She's my wife. I was momentarily stunned, struggling to grasp his words. After a brief pause, I asked, Richard, did you say Karen is your wife? Not your girlfriend? Richard nodded with a grin. Yes, Mom. Maybe you're going a bit deaf. I couldn't bring myself to laugh at my son's teasing. I haven't heard about you getting married. Did you know about this? I asked my husband. He shook his head, equally puzzled. No, I didn't hear anything either. We both turned to Richard, seeking an explanation. With a proud smile, he said, That's why I came to announce our marriage registration today. By the way, we had a grand wedding in Bali with our friends. We were speechless. Richard, oblivious to our stunned reaction, continued to rave about the wonderful wedding in Bali. My head began to ache, and I carefully asked, You've already registered and had the wedding. Why weren't we invited? Karen, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Do we need to invite strangers? I was taken aback by her words. She continued calmly, Isn't it a waste of money? I couldn't hold back my emotions. No, we are Richard's parents, I said, my voice trembling. Karen seemed unconvinced and said with a dissatisfied look, But you're strangers to me. I was taken aback and fell silent. My son must have finally noticed the tension in the room and hurriedly explained, Karen has no parents or siblings. It would have been sad if she was the only one without family at the wedding. That's why I didn't invite you guys. Hearing about Karen's situation left me at a loss for words. I thought if that's the case, maybe it could be understood. Of course, I wasn't entirely satisfied, but I told myself it was too late since the wedding was already over. After the newlyweds left, I confided in my husband. I wonder if those two will be okay. He shared my concern but said, It's their decision. They're already married. All we can do is watch over them. Although I agreed with him, I couldn't just leave it at that. So I decided to try to bridge the gap with Karen. I got my son's phone number and decided to reach out. When Karen realized it was me on the phone, her tone immediately turned sour. What do you want? I realized my call might have made Karen uncomfortable, so I quickly explained my reason. I got some delicious treats and I thought I'd bring them over to you next time. Karen replied, Oh, I don't need that. In fact, I don't even plan to give you my address. I couldn't help but ask why. Karen calmly answered, I don't want to give personal information to strangers. Please delete my phone number. Before I could say anything else, she hung up. After that, I couldn't get in touch with Karen. I realized my gesture must have felt like an intrusion to her. Feeling down, I shared my worries with my husband. He comforted me, saying, There's still time. Don't rush. Forcing closeness won't necessarily lead to good results. Just hope that she'll open her heart to us someday. I took a deep breath and nodded. You're right. A month after I stopped trying to contact my son and his wife, my son suddenly reached out. What's going on? I asked. He told me Karen is pregnant. I was thrilled by the happy news. Knowing how tough it can be for a first-time mother without her parents, I asked for their address so I could go help. But my son said, No, I can't give you the address. We don't need help, just money. Give me your bank account number so I can transfer it. I tried to explain to my son how difficult childbirth could be, but he wouldn't listen. Moreover, he said that Karen herself was against it. In the end, I transferred only the money as my son requested. After that, I never heard from him again. There was not even a report of the child's birth. A year passed, and despite my attempts to call, I eventually couldn't reach him at all. It seemed my son no longer thought of us as family. Even if I wanted to confirm it, there was no way to get in touch. Feeling helpless, I went to the local supermarket one day and met a familiar face. At first, I didn't recognize him, but when he called out to me, I realized who he was. It's been a long time. Do you remember me? I'm David Johnson. Hearing the name, my memory came rushing back. He was a friend my son often brought home during high school. I didn't recognize him at first because in my mind he was still a high school student. David, you've grown up so well. I said, looking at him closely. David seemed pleased and a bit shy. Then I noticed the woman standing next to him. She wore a matching ring with David, and her belly was noticeably large. I involuntarily covered my mouth and exclaimed, "Oh my!" David nodded shyly. "This is my wife, Olivia. Our child is due in 2 months." "Olivia, is it? Congratulations." "Thank you," Olivia said, looking momentarily confused before smiling happily. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, we parted ways quickly, not wanting to impose on the expectant mother. 2 months later, I received an email from David. We had exchanged contact information during our reunion because he wanted to share the news of the birth. The email included a photo of their newborn baby, a truly adorable little one. As I looked at the picture, I couldn't help but imagine what it would be like if it were my own grandchild. I looked at the photo of the baby, someone I had never met, and found myself shedding a few tears. I emailed David, offering to send a gift to celebrate the occasion. Shortly after, a flustered David called me. "I didn't reach out with that intention, so please don't trouble yourself." I couldn't help but chuckle at David's apologetic tone. "That's not it. I just want to celebrate, since I can't do anything for my own grandchild." There was a pause on the other end before David asked, "Something happened with Richard, didn't it?" I remained silent, and David continued. "I was hesitant to tell you, but actually," he revealed a shocking story. Olivia was originally Richard's girlfriend. Richard had chosen another woman and unceremoniously dumped Olivia. That woman was Karen. Olivia was devastated after being abandoned by Richard, and I couldn't leave her to deal with it alone. I tried to convince Richard to make things right, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, I gave up and ended our friendship. David's story ended there. At that moment, I felt a deep sense of anger toward both my son and Karen, despite being my own child. I also realized that my actions had unintentionally reminded Olivia of her painful past. Even though I wasn't aware of it, I had caused her distress. She likely didn't want to see Richard's mother. "I'm truly sorry for mentioning that I wanted to celebrate," I apologized. David quickly reassured me. "You don't need to apologize, Mrs. Smith. Olivia doesn't mind. She was the one who wanted to send the baby's picture. Please don't worry about it." Their kindness only made me feel more guilty. David then added, "I just don't want Olivia to have anything to do with Richard and his wife ever again." I agreed wholeheartedly. "I'll do whatever I can to help, even if it might not be much." I also shared with David the strained relationship I had with my son and his wife. David was visibly shocked by Richard's recent behavior. We quickly shifted the conversation to lighter topics before ending the call. I relayed everything I had learned from David to my husband. I then told him that from now on, I would consider Richard and his family as strangers. My husband agreed. "At least we can take a breather." I glanced around the room, where most of the unpacking was complete, and nodded. Our new life begins here today. The house we had lived in felt too large for just the two of us. When we were considering moving, we were introduced to this newly built high-rise condominium. We had planned to inform our son about the move, but ultimately decided against it. I headed out to buy ingredients for dinner. As soon as I stepped out the front door, someone called out to me, "Mom." I turned around, unsure of what I was seeing, and there was my son, approaching with a slight smile. "Why didn't you tell me you moved?" "I was surprised to find strangers at the old house. I had to search quite a bit to find you," he said. I met his gaze with stern eyes. "I didn't need to tell you. You're a stranger to me." Richard seemed taken aback by my change in attitude and grew flustered. "What are you talking about? I'm your son." I ignored him and started walking. Richard quickly fell into step beside me and continued talking. Mom, I want to apologize for everything that's happened. I was misled by Karen. You must have some extra money if you're living in a new high-rise condo, right?" Despite Richard's attempts to engage, I kept walking. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Richard's tone grew anxious. Karen was a habitual liar. Her claim of having no family was false. She was actually disowned by her parents due to a romantic scandal at her previous job. When I glanced at my son, he misunderstood my silence and continued to criticize Karen. Karen came to me for money after she couldn't make it on her own after quitting her job. I was just deceived. I should be able to live in that high-rise condo too. I stopped and faced him. He seemed hopeful that I was finally ready to listen, but I held his gaze firmly and said, "You chose that dishonest woman despite being in a relationship with someone else. This is the consequence of your actions." Richard looked stunned by my words. I delivered my final message. Your only family now is Karen. You two are perfectly suited for each other. Leaving him there, I walked away and contacted David. I was concerned that Richard might cause trouble for David or Olivia. As I feared, Richard had tried to apologize to Olivia and asked David to mediate between us. He even said something absurd like, "You two got married because of me." David, at his breaking point, announced he was severing ties with my son and warned that he would call the police if Richard continued to harass them. In a panic, Richard fled. Afterward, Richard tried to spread malicious rumors about David and Olivia among their mutual friends but was met with disdain instead. Karen, who was supposed to be his only ally, abandoned him, running off with another man after squandering all of Richard's savings and left their child behind. Seeing the situation worsen, we decided not to intervene despite hearing the rumors. Eventually, Richard came to us with the child in tow. "You must feel sorry for your grandchild, right? Let us stay here," he pleaded. My husband, who had been silent until now, exploded in anger. "Don't be ridiculous. Stop acting like a spoiled child at your age. You're no longer our son but a stranger. Get out." Frightened by our harsh reaction, my son fled, leaving the grandchild behind. My husband quickly locked the front door while I gently picked up the child. The little one, oblivious to the situation, reached out to my husband with a smile. Seeing that innocent smile, my husband and I shared the same thought. While we have no intention of forgiving our son and Karen, the child is innocent. We exchanged a nod and decided to raise this child ourselves. I heard that my son is now doing physical labor, likely struggling to make ends meet with a job he detests. Despite his hardships, he hasn't tried to come back home, though even if he did, the outcome would be the same. My husband and I are fully occupied with caring for our grandchild. Although raising a child at our age is challenging, the child's smile gives us the strength to keep going. For tasks that are too difficult, we rely on the help of David and his wife, for which we are deeply grateful. It seems that a leisurely retirement is still a distant dream, but for now, I want to savor the time with my husband and grandchild.